Us now to break this down is Dimitri Elovskii. Now he's the editor and presenter at the Vozduk YouTube channel. So first of all, I think the question that we all have is, are these sanctions really having that much of a devastating impact on Russia's wealthiest?
Hi, Natasha. Thank you very much for having me. Well, I'm afraid that no. I guess West is kind of overestimating the possible impact of these sanctions because that rich people, that oligarchs, they still live a pretty posh and pretty rich lifestyle. So they are pretty smart, and yes, as you said, they are yachts. They're just changing the flags. They're just doing what they can to continue living that luxurious way of living and to keep on spending the money in the West. So I guess no, it's not that. It's not a big deal for Russian rich people.
Right. And I mean, obviously, we're hearing from Ukrainians that the sanctions are not enough, that they want boots on the ground, that they want weapons. That's really the only way that they believe that this conflict, that this war can be ended. But, my question is whether or not these sanctions are making an impact on Putin's decision making, because we know that he's surrounded by a whole group and has always been surrounded by a whole group of oligarchs that fund him. That's the essence of his power and wealth. So wouldn't it be an issue if they were, in fact, impacted?
We witness a kind of tricky situation right now because there used to be some sort of agreement between that rich people, that oligarchs, and Putin himself and the government itself. So yes, it used to be an authoritarian regime. It used to be some sort of a dictatorship, but people still could travel. They could buy villas and yachts all over the world and travel all over the world. But what we see now is actually, it might change the situation a little bit. And we see a number of rich people living in London, for instance. Now they are under sanctions, and they are trying their best to avoid the other sanctions, to avoid another impact. For instance, we know that Mr. Abramovich, an owner who used to be an owner of Chelsea Football Club and other very important assets, he's now trying his best as a negotiator to get back the British soldiers who were fighting for Ukraine and to solve some sort of a peace deal with among Russia and Ukraine. So they're trying their best, actually.
Is Putin still receiving support from he promised from the beginning of this war that these billionaires would not be impacted. Is he seeing any kind of lack of support now as a result of the way in which their lifestyles have been impacted, even if it's minimal?
You see, Putin has built some sort of a closed system, which actually reminds me about relations, for instance, in the army or in prison. It's a very closed circle, and he tries to not to make the decisions on his own. So he's bringing as much people as he can to bring in the decisions. And he's sort of waiting for people to come over and to discuss things and to, for instance, propose something, because he's not ready to take all the guilty on himself, only on himself. So this is why I think people now are around him. I mean, that people who are source of his power and of his money, they're feeling not very secure these days.
Well, beyond just money, obviously, Russia's also facing a brain drain of sorts. You're seeing a lot of intellectuals leaving the country. I mean, the upper class who feel deeply impacted by the sanctions. Because maybe, if you're a billionaire, it's certainly different than being middle class or upper class in Russia. But really fascinating. Dimitri, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us and breaking that down.